Hey everyone, and welcome back to Timeless. One of the cool things that came out of Qualifier weekend last weekend are a bunch of variations on the top decks in the format. What we're looking at here is Jeskai Energy, which was piloted by Riley to the 7 wins on day 1. This is a variation of the Mardu and Boros energy decks that are at the top of the ladder, splashing blue for Mockingbird, and some very, very pointed sideboard cards for Show and Tell. This did really well at the challenge, especially because it is essentially tech to beat some of the top decks in the format. If you put on the blinders really quick and you just imagine this format as having 3 decks being Energy, Show and Tell, and Demir, this deck has a lot of stock against all of them, especially Show and Tell. We have all of these sideboard slots dedicated to Show and Tell, and it allows us to literally sideboard out all of these removal spells and just sideboard in so many dedicated hate pieces against Show and Tell. If you think about the Demir matchup, it plays all of these 1-drops, including Mockingbird, as a redundant 1-drop. And that is really tough for them to deal with. The draws that are really tough for Demir to deal with are when you can put so much pressure on the board really quickly, and they have to find a Toxic Deluge or lose. And even in the mirror match, you are playing some Flages. This deck does lose a little bit of stock in the mirror match because we are losing Luris. We do gain Flage, but if this deck was to be teched for the mirror match, and this is my suggestion for you if you pick this deck up and you want to play it on ladder, I'd suggest adding the One Ring either to the main deck or the sideboard. Some amount of copies of that, because in the mirror it's just so incredibly, incredibly good. And if you're not playing Luris, I think you probably should play the One Ring. It's very powerful. I think you are going to lose some games because of it. So that's why I think you would want to put in the sideboard, because you don't want to have that main deck queue up against Show and Tell, and then Show and Tell kills you while you have 2 rings in your hand, right? It's terrible. But against other creature decks and other energy variants, the ring kind of slaps. But this deck did do very well. Riley was able to get 7 wins with it, and I hadn't been playing Magic much the last 2 weeks. You might have noticed the lack of gameplay videos. So I picked this deck up, and I got a really quick run to Mythic with it. It is very powerful. I know people are going to ask me what's better, this or like Mardu Laris, and I think they are pretty close. Like, I personally, of course, like my version a little bit better, but if you think this suits your playstyle a little bit more and you'd rather play with the Jegantha instead of Laris, if you'd like to explore playing with the One Ring, I think that this deck is a really good deck to start with, definitely. Mockingbird definitely did impress me in my time playing with the deck, by the way. When it first came out, we tried it and we said, yes, this is good. However, you have to drop the black splash or become a 4-color energy deck, which is a little insane. And I do value having Discard, Juggernaut Peddlers, Bowmasters, and Chthonian Nightmare in the deck a lot. So that's why I ended up not playing Mockingbird. However, when the meta is nice and predictable and you know you're going to be against Show and Tell and you're going to bring in all of these sideboard cards that are specifically good against Show and Tell, it might be worth it to be Jeskai instead of Mardu. I think that's going to be it for me. Everything else about the deck's pretty straightforward. We have 12 fetch lands here to enable Flage as much as possible. I know this is a bit more than usual. We have the 1 Arena of Glory for Flage. We only have a basic Plains. Basic Island would be way too awkward in the deck. Sideboard has all these cards for Show and Tell. 10 of them up here. 2 Disruptor Flutes, which are again marginal against Show and Tell. You could also bring those in if you really wanted to, but it's more for other combo decks. Other decks leaning around certain activated abilities or certain specific cards. And then we have 2 copies of Unlicensed Hearse here at the bottom. So if you end up against another Flage deck, this is also fine against Demir. You're going to want to bring in your Unlicensed Hearses. All right, that's it for me. Let's go ahead and get into the gameplay. All right, game 1. We're going to be on the play against another Jegantha deck. Jegantha usually means other energy variants, and this is a pretty good hand against them. We have a nice mix of creatures. We have your removal spell for when it is needed. We can put the pressure on really proactively with Double Ajani, threatening to flip it. I do like this hand a lot. We'll start with Sacred Foundry, and then probably fetch a blue-white land here so that we have the option to play Mockingbird. Mockingbird is awesome because it can copy just about anything. So we can even copy like our opponent's Guide of Souls if they lead with a Guide of Souls, which would be really fun. You could even do like really tilting things like copy your Guide of Souls, then use Static Prison to get rid of the opposing Guide of Souls, which is definitely a tilter. It puts you behind a lot as the energy player. My opponent did Mold of 5 here. We're just going to still stick with the game plan that we said before. Great, my opponent's going to sock Sacred Foundry in. That means they almost definitely have a removal spell here, so I'm going to attack my Ocelot Pride. They're probably going to remove it before combat. It's totally fine. So here we're just going to go ahead and shock in a blue source for Mockingbird. We did draw a tap land. I want to play that next turn because I really just want to play a Johnny twice in a row. Even if the first Johnny gets removed, it's a good way to proactively put pressure on the board while we're on the play and our opponent mulliganed. Our opponent mulliganed, it's pretty important just to put the pressure on as fast as possible. Alright, there'll be a Ragavan. Might have a little trouble connecting. Static Prison to hit my Johnny, sure thing. We can copy their Ragavan whenever we want. That's the fun part about this deck. So this turn, do we want a Johnny or do we want double Guide of Souls? I love the idea of double Guide of Souls. I think that's what we're going to go for here. I'm going to go ahead and play this tapped Arena of Glory. We don't have a Flage. I'm going to go ahead and say no to this. We don't necessarily need a fourth land yet. If we happen to draw a fourth land, I'm okay with it. But I think an average draw is a bit better. We're going to go with double Guide here. We could actually steal their Ragavan, which would be pretty funny. And fly it with the Guide of Souls, which would be interesting. But I'm more interested in just snowballing because we're going to play a Johnny, make at least 2 creatures next turn, which is going to be at least 4 life and 4 energy. Means we're going to get to fly one thing, probably fly 2 different things. I didn't attack, by the way, because if they attack with Ragavan, I want to block my cat. I want to keep both guides alive. My opponent plays their own Johnny, which is quite good for them. Block here. Okay, cool. And then we draw a Surveil land. I'm going to play this before I do anything, just in case it influences my decisions. Knowing what's on top. Oh, Bombardment. Oh, that's a good one. I think I'm still cool just throwing a Johnny down onto the board. I can Legend Rule the Johnnies right now by using Static Prison on Static Prison, but there's no reason to do that with Bombardment coming. I think I still definitely do just want to play this Johnny. Now I'm just thinking, do I want to also Static Prison their Johnny? Get it out of the way. Make sure it never flips. Do not think this would be a bad idea, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that Johnny right now. And the reason I do it now is so I get that extra energy so that we can crash in for a lot of damage. We know our opponent double mulliganed. They're only on 1 card in hand, so I really just want to put the pressure on. Spread out the counters a little bit. Your turn, opponent. Legion is going to come through. That can kill my Johnny pretty cleanly. It's unfortunate. I did want to flip him. Legion is definitely a card that lets my opponent get back into the game, but it's really not the end of the world. I'm also not going to be able to generate energy to keep this alive. That's troublesome. I will go ahead and pay, though, to keep them from getting that back for another turn. I think we're just going to hit our opponent like this. I'm going to play my own Bombardment anyway, because this Bombardment is reach. One of my things gets hit by a removal spell. We can use this as a way to get value. They're giving me a Johnny back and a lot of energy, buddy. I don't know if that was correct, even if they only have 1 energy left. So now I'm out of my predicament. This Static Prison isn't going to break anymore. I can flip my Johnny. I guess my opponent maybe just give up. Maybe they get misclicked. So unfortunately, there's not too much to do in the mirror. What we are going to do is we're going to bring in the hearses because Flage is the most important card in this matchup. So we need to make sure their Flage gets exiled if it hits the graveyard. And going second in energy mirrors, I do like to take out the Ragavan, just because it's a little difficult to make him actually connect. And then going first, I might bring him back in. Oh, wow, that's a lot of 1-drops. Let's go ahead and keep this, even though our opponent's going first. We can kind of go crazy with life gain with this hand. Okay, I'd love another untapped land, just so that I'm guaranteed to be able to play multiple things at once. Pretty sure this guide is going to eat a removal spell. I think I'm actually going to play Ocelot Pride first. Usually I like to sequence guide first. Pretty sure my opponent is going to remove this. Or remove at least one thing that I play. And I can set up a turn where I play a Guide of Souls and copy it up in the same turn, so I'm guaranteed to have 1 in play at least. So with a tap land, it's going to take a while to get to that turn. Alright, my opponent plays in a Johnny, which just kind of stonewall me. Okay, we did hit an untapped mana. That's awesome. So we can do Guide of Souls plus Ocelot Pride, just hold the Mockingbird. Seems fine. We could copy a Johnny at any point, but keep in mind, if we copy a Johnny, we can't flip him. That's not how the card works. We can't copy the backside of the card, unfortunately, so Mockingbird would just die. Alright, let's go ahead and grab Hallowed Fountain here. That'd be the option to Mockingbird next turn. Actually, I'm going to Mockingbird this turn to be super safe, because Actually, no, we'll play Ocelot Pride. The reason I wanted to be safe is because my opponent could like use a removal spell. Let's say I wanted to use Mockingbird to copy up Guide of Souls. My opponent can point the removal spells at Guide of Souls before Mockingbird resolves, but there's so many targets for Mockingbird on the board at this point that I don't think it's really possible for me to get blown out when I play it next turn. An opposing Guide of Souls. Ajani will be flipped here. But we are going to be able to attack down this Ajani real quick. I think we're totally in control of this game. We're going to be able to use our extra energy to attack down this Ajani. They get plus here. Yeah, they will plus here. Just get them a little bigger. They will fly that guy in. Yeah, it's fine. But what I might want to do... Ooh, there's a couple of things I might want to do. Let's see what's on top of our deck before we make a decision. It's worse than an average drop. So we have a couple of decisions here. Let's think about them. Decision number one, which I think is bad, is just play Amped Raptor and blindly hit something. Decision number two, we can play a Goblin Bombardment, and then like on our end step, make sure Ajani dies, because we're going to make a buttload of tokens this turn. And then option number three, play Mockingbird, copy up Ocelot Pride, which would be a buttload +1 of tokens. And then Swords to Plowshares, the guide. I think I like the kill Ajani option here. Goblin Bombardment. Ocelot Pride is going to attack like this. So stop here, just in case I miss it. You're gonna end step here. You're gonna make 2. You're gonna make 4. That's a lot of energy. I didn't need to stop on the end step. I was just afraid I was gonna forget to kill Ajani now on end step as opposed to later. Yeah, okay, my opponent gives up. That was pretty understandable. Goblin Bombardment, very strong card in the mirror. I always say the person who controls the Goblin Bombardment controls the board, and I think that game was a really, really good example. I mean, obviously we were going crazy with the Ocelot Prides, but even if we weren't going that crazy, let's say we didn't make cat tokens that turn, we could have just traded these 2 nonsense junky tokens for Ajani, which is the most valuable card on the board, really easily. Alright, game 2. We got a good old hand full of cards. The good ones in our deck, in fact. We have a nice mix of removal spells and proactive threats. We have a bunch of 1-drops. I mean, that's what the energy deck is. And why the deck is always so good and so fun to play is that your deck is just a bunch of redundancy. You never run out of threats. You never run out of removal spells because that's all that's in your deck, really. So here, let's think about our fetch sequencing. Thankfully, the colors aren't too crazy in this deck. You just need to almost always fetch a white source. So I think we're going to fetch red-white into blue-white as our colors. Doesn't particularly matter. We're going to shoot this Pride with Discharge right now. I have a choice between Discharge and Swords. I will always use Discharge if the creature is really low toughness, unless there's some reason I need it exiled. Okay, there's Ajani. He's a guy that you might want to exile because they can get recurred with Chthonian Nightmare pretty easily. Get all the energy mirrors today to show what's up. I think that is what we're going to want to do. I think we're going to want to just Swords the Ajani and play a guide. Would I ever want to just Swords and hold up mana to Surveil and Swords again on their turn? I don't think so. I think we should get proactive. So let's go ahead and play some blue mana while we do it. We have all of our colors online. Play this. I could have actually sorted on their turn. So usually when my opponent's tapped out completely and I have just 1 removal spell to hit the Ajani, I'm just going to do it at sorcery speed because my opponent could do something sneaky like shoot this cat in response with a Galvanic Discharge, and then I wasted my swords. So let's just take out Ajani cleanly while we have the opportunity. Sweet, that's our own Ajani. That's pretty good. Want to play Ajani, or do we want to just play Amped Raptor here? I think we probably just want to play Ajani and Surveil. Because if Amped Raptor hits a removal spell, this is not the best target for a removal spell. It's not really worth a removal just to take out the little cat. Let's just play Ajani, take our Surveil.
shall we hunt today?
We'll go ahead and use the amulet. Okay, cool. So they're on a version of the deck playing cards like Fable, maybe even the One Ring. That's a bit better in the mirror match. Same with amulet, slow cards. Slow cards that will give them that card advantage over time. Okay, shoot my Johnny, that's totally fine. Not ideal, but we can just untap play after. I think we can go ahead and trade here. This cat token doesn't have too much utility to me now that a Johnny is dead. And we'll go ahead and surveil here. Fourth land, do we want that? What fourth land will let us do is actually Amp Raptor copy Amp Raptor this turn. I'm actually pretty interested in that. Let's start with just Amp Raptor. It's an Amp Raptor. Alright, but hear me out. How about another Amp Raptor? And a cat. Cool. Alright, so we do have a bunch of first strike pressure to put on our opponent now, which is pretty good. And we have a swords just in case they do play a big creature like Flage that can threaten to end the game. Also might need to swords the backside of this Kiki. Or Guide of Souls. Guide of Souls is a scary card. Oh, they got scary cards on the other side of the board. Oh, another guide. No. Alright, this might end up being a loss, unfortunately. We need something good here. Like a Guide of Souls of our own would be really good. Yeah, we're gonna take so much damage here. Okay, we take 4. I think we have no choice but to take it, really. Amp Raptor, that is a card that can go places. Total Raptor victory, as they say. I think we're gonna have to take out that Shaman. And then out of another Swords, I'm wondering, should I be using it on Guide of Souls or on the flipped Kiki? I think it's gotta get used on the flipped Kiki. Means they could fly something, right? That's really unfortunate for us. I'm not happy about this at all. Attack with my guys, see if they make a mistake in blocking. Yeah. I'm just thinking if I have an out here, because if they fly something, I die. And I don't want to swords whatever they fly, because I don't want them to keep the Kiki in play. I could kill a Guide of Souls before combat, or right now before this flips, and they don't get as much energy. Yes. This isn't great though, because if they draw any other creature, they will have enough energy to fly something and kill me. Of course, I could chump block with Amp Raptor, but I don't think that's a winning play. We're doing great right now. Ooh, amulets are gonna ping us to death. That's a new way to die. We could probably wrap this up soon. You're gonna attack me instead of trying to ping to death with amulet? Sure. Go ahead and chump here. I draw a removal spell, we're doing okay. Hard to say we're doing great, but we certainly could be doing okay. That will be it. We could surveil a Flage into our graveyard, actually. We have a 1-outer. If there's a Flage on top of our deck, we win. Oh, nope, that's not my surveil land. I misclicked. Alright. So, did we see Flage in their deck? We can kind of assume they're running it, right? I would assume so. But honestly, on the play, I'm just going to keep Ragavan in against this version of the deck. Instead of the Hearse, and then on the draw, we can bring in Hearse if we do indeed see Flage. Alright, on the play for game 2. What we got here? Not the best hand ever. Lots of lands, including a tapped one. But we do have removal spells that should be fine. Actually, against another energy version that's a bit greedier than us, I think we're going to mulligan once to try and find something more explosive. And yeah, we got a Johnny Bombardment. That's as explosive as it gets, right? And I think we can keep this Elegant Parlor here and just start with it because I'm not going to play anything turn on. Another Pride, that's pretty good with a Johnny, so sure. Opponent's going to play Ragavan. So here, instead of playing a Johnny, I think we're just going to One of Swords Ragavan. I'll give myself options, though. I won't fire off the swords right away because this is a really good blocker for the Ragavan. The Static Prison's going to come through, hit my Pride, sure. And then here we're just going to Swords the Ragavan. We'll get blue for our Mockingbird. And then next turn we play Johnny, turn after we play Bombardment. We can also play Bombardment first if we really want. Oh, we can also play Raptor. Raptor is so sweet. Raptor is so sweet. So what do we want to do here? Do we want to build up board state, or do we want to threaten to flip a Johnny next turn? My opponent could definitely have more removal spells. Hitting Amped Raptor, I mean, every hit in our deck is good except for Flage. If we play Amped Raptor. So we'll play Amped Raptor here. The Johnny, it could be a little troublesome if my opponent just removes it and then keeps going ahead on board. Now we have Guide of Souls to make playing a Johnny very profitable because we'll get 2 energy out of that. We can also Mockingbird copy up Amped Raptor, Mockingbird copy up Guide next turn instead. If we draw a land, I'm pretty sure I'm going to copy up Guide of Souls and then play a Johnny, and then we just have a crap ton of energy, and it's going to be very difficult to lose at that point. Opponent will, of course, play their own Johnny.
It's not perfect, but we have...
We're going to need to get a Bombardment down at some point. Yep, and that'll probably go for my Guide, yeah. Okay. Well, my opponent does have some energy upkeep to pay. Okay, yeah, let's do what we said we would. I'll go ahead and fetch a basic, probably. Just in case I draw another red card I want to play, let's get red-white. I'm going to copy your Guide of Souls. And then play a Johnny.
Nothing is more important than family.
Sweet, and then we can go ahead, turn Amped Raptor sideways, pay our energy, because we don't have Static Prisoner or anything in play. We don't have to worry about that. And even if my opponent flips a Johnny here, they can kill one thing, but we'll still keep a good card in play no matter what. Could maybe argue, do we want a sequence to play Bombardment first to try and help? I think it's good to get the board state going. But if my opponent flips a Johnny right here, like they have their own Bombardment right now, it is pretty bad for us. Okay, flipping a Johnny without a red card is not bad, though, if they don't have a red card here and they're just flipping it with the Legend rule. They get a lot of energy, though. A lot of energy, a lot of life, but we should be able to win on board next turn once we use our Bombardment. You're getting a lot of life, though. a lot of life. Look at a plus a Johnny, cool.
Our pride must fight together.
Here, we need to kill their Johnny and their Guide of Souls. We do have 5 power in the air here. I wonder what the plan is for the opponent. What's the plan here? Go Bucks. The plan might change based on what we draw, so I'm gonna wait to draw the card before we formulate too much. But as it stands, we're probably just going to kill a Johnny by attacking, and then kill this with the Johnny activation, maybe ping down Guide of Souls as well. Probably ping down Guide of Souls. That card's scary. We drew nothing, or nothing useful at least. I'm going to go to combat first, just to make sure a Johnny is dying to combat damage. It looks like he is, that's good.
All you want is trouble. I need time to heal.
What's bad here about flipping the Ajani, though, is that it might just die. It may very much just die. I'd activate this. We have 1 ping here, but unfortunately, we can't kill Guide of Souls or the cat easily without also sacrificing like our own Guide of Souls here. This is problematic, but my opponent has to like pay energy here. So they're probably not going to have energy to fly this turn, which means I could block on the ground. Amped Raptor, that may very much give them energy to fly. Yeah, they're gonna have 3 energy. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wait for them to pay the energy with Guide of Souls and then shoot it. I could have also shot Guide of Souls in response with Amped Raptor on the stack over there. That definitely would have been valid. All right, we gotta ask ourselves, what do we value here? Do we value the Guide of Souls bird, or do we value the 4/3 Amped Raptor more? I'm actually thinking I might value the Guide of Souls bird a lot. I was thinking about it. They probably should be attacking and forcing me to do something, though. I think not attacking is never the right play. Also, if they choose to pay energy here... Oh, they don't. Nice. Okay. I will take this then. Nice and easy. Because they knew these prisons were going to pop if they paid energy. I think we're totally fine now. Unfortunately, we drew a blank. Not the end of the world. We're going to want to hit Guide of Souls here. These other cards can just be blocked. And honestly, I think we are far enough ahead that we are just going to sit back. Just going to sit back because I don't want Ragavan to get a hit in. I want to have this Amp Raptor up to block. Could have maybe attacked with one thing, actually. Just attacked with this for 1 damage, maybe. Because these just have 1 toughness, I can ping them really easy. Push comes to shove. Okay, that is going to be a bolt for Johnny. It's pretty good for them.
My search has come up empty.
Hey, my turn. Ah, Leech. Fantastic. Best card we can draw. Let's go ahead and take out that Ragavan. Take out Ragavan, get a bunch of energy. And now we're just going to turn our boys sideways. And it looks like we have lethal on board for next turn if my opponent can't figure something out. Also, I'm getting a gift back from them. They get to pick whether I get a guide or a pride, and the choice is we go to game 3. Oh, right. Did we see Fledge? No. Alright, we'll just keep Ragavans in. Maybe it's the right decision to put the hearses in, but I do like Ragavans. Okay. I think this is going to be a mulligan on the same logic that our mulligan last game happened. We just want a more explosive hand. 5 lands is not going to cut it. 5 lands is essentially a force mulligan. It's just not an oomph to actually finish the game ever. This is going to be fine. We can start with Guide of Souls, then Mockingbird, back it up with a removal spell. It's really good, actually. Okay, that's a Ragavan first. I'm going to be disciplined here, and we're just going to swords it on sight. I could, of course, wait to their combat step, but my opponent, they had another Ragavan, they just play it in their second main phase. If they dash Ragavan here, that's an objectively incorrect play, so I'm fine to let them make that mistake. I do swords a bunch for F6 value. People ask me why I do that on my main phase. Because if my opponent really wants to spend their second turn dashing Ragavan doing this and not accomplishing anything, they're free to do so. I'll give my opponent the chance to make a mistake at any opportunity. All right, here, we're probably just going to want to play double guide. What's unfortunate is that we're going to have to let that Ragavan hit us maybe if they dash it. I think I'm totally fine with that, though. So play guide, bird up the guide. We're going to play our own Ragavan here. Well, I don't have the opportunity anymore because of the Arena Tapper. But there was thought given to Guide of Souls into Ragavan with the intention of turning the Ragavan sideways. But we can just do that next turn and have the Ragavan connect 1 turn later. Ocelot Party, yeah, that's good stuff for them. That's good stuff. You're gonna just have to get away with it. Okay, and a lightning bolt, yeah. Alright, so my opponent has all the busted 1-drops. Ah, my own busted 1-drop. I love magic. Did I ever talk about how much I like Magic? We have a Goblin Bombardment too, so it's kind of just over. Let's go ahead and play double Ocelot Pride. What a fun mirror match. All right. We can attack here. Probably worth doing, right? We're gonna get a bunch more energy on end step. We're gonna get a bunch more energy next turn. We're gonna really play Bombardment though next turn, and that's where we go off. That's where we like truly go insane with this deck. Because then we just start turning all of our cat tokens into removal spells. Right, opponent is going to be getting in there with a Ragavan in the air. They're dashing it and paying energy, which is not something I really recommend because they essentially just wasted that energy. They can, of course, generate more energy. They don't know that I have this bombardment in hand, which is going to give them a tough time. Also, what's a little scary or a little bad for them, I'm sorry, bad for me, is that I don't have a way to gain life. I'll play bombardment here. I'll let my opponent make a mistake again, I think. Let them make a mistake like this. Because my idea is that they block Ocelot Pride and then I sack some tokens to make sure the block doesn't happen. I want to gain life this turn. What are we doing here? Yeah, I'm going to turn this sideways really quick. This does go sour if they do decide to block with everything, or if they just trade. If they just trade, it's not the end of the world, because I think I'm going to be ahead here. So we're going to go ahead and let this trade happen. I don't know if that was the correct play. I think maybe what I could have done is just played Ragavan and then held up swords. I'm going to pass the turn. We'll use this bombardment tactically. If they want to dash this Ragavan and put more energy into it, then I'm absolutely going to let them do that. And we'll swords the guy next turn. Yeah, I don't think I played correctly last turn. By the way, I think it should have been these two cards that I played. Just had the idea in my head and I went with it a little ham-fistedly. Right? This is good by me. We're probably going to swords this guide here. Another monkey. Sure. Ah, my own guide. I want to put the monkey so it doesn't have summoning sickness for next turn. That's what I really want in life. Guide of Souls will go ahead and put counters onto itself. I'm gonna swords their Guide of Souls and ping the monkey, probably. Okay, Static Prison for my guide. No, it's got all the counters. Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't have wasted all that energy knowing that I really want to make my Ragavan fly. Again, we're doing things wrong. Let me think. Do I want make my opponent pay energy? I think so. I think there's a good chance I get this Guide of Souls back in a couple turns. Especially if my opponent here decides to pay 3 energy to make Ragavan have flying. That would help me out a lot. Okay, they're going to maybe spend some energy here instead. I don't know why they're not attacking with Ragavan for once. They do spend the energy. That's fantastic for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to ping that. Take the damage. And I think we go ahead and swords this Guide of Souls right now. And then hopefully we get our own guide back very soon. Oh my god, we draw the best possible cards. He never gets punished, not once in his life. Yeah, I don't think we played this game perfectly, but our top of our deck was blessed, and we have probably won the game with only 2 lands in play, which is definitely a tilter for our opponent. Yep, and now I just have like infinite fodder for this Goblin Bombardment too. Yeah, exactly. Just scoop it up. It's gonna be frustrating for them. Alright, game 3. We're going to be on the play against a Nord. What we got here, we have a nice hand that is a fair mix of creatures and removal spells. I'll be happy to keep this. I'm going to go ahead and fetch up a Surveil land in case we don't need to use Sword to Plowshares, but if they do play, Ragavan, Guide of Souls, something like that, we're going to want to answer it on the spot. We can go ahead and get blue mana here so that we have it for later. Alright, fourth land, do we need it? Probably not. Go ahead and throw that in the bin. We do want to draw fourth land eventually, of course, but I think it is not better than an average draw. Here we're just going to want to play out a Johnny, try to put pressure on them. Don't know what they're playing. Probably show and tell, but you really can't tell out of nothing. No companion generally does mean unfair deck. Got some Breeding Pool Gaming coming through. And then Step Brainstorm, the classic.
Fight beside me, brother.
We got here. We're going to want to turn our Johnny sideways. I'm pretty sure this is show and tell, so we kind of want to goldfish them. We're going to turn our Johnny sideways. We'll probably play Amped Raptor, hoping we high roll here. We can also Legend Rule our Johnny here, because we will have a red permanent in play, but I think we can do that Legend Rule next turn. So let's go ahead and just play Amped Raptor. We'll play Ragavan right after. If they cast Show and Tell really quick on Disciplined, we can Static Prison it off of the card Show and Tell, which is pretty cool. Of course, they win if they have like a Born in hand, but the Show and Tell players don't have it every time, okay? Ooh, control Show and Tell gaming. I like it. Let's go ahead and play our Ragavan here. Alright, my opponent just did a bit of assembling on their turn. We're going to want to turn our guy sideways. I think we're going to have enough to kill here just by clicking our Johnny. Aha! I love that card. Go ahead, pay like this. This. We want to keep this one. We're just a smidge short, aren't we? Well, we'll get there next turn, I'm sure. Right, and pass. We do have the Static Prison in hand, so we're probably okay. They need Show and Tell and Born. Well, Show and Omni and Born. I don't know why I said Show and Tell. Alright, this is the matchup that we have a gazillion sideboard cards for, right? So we can take out the Swords, we can take out the Discharge, we can take out my boy Flage, and then we put in all of the Lavinias, all the Meddling Mages, all the Roiling Vortices. And then that is a deck. And in fact, an extra slot. I will put in Flute, so that we can name Show and Tell. You could also argue that we could take Prison out, but I do like it as a backup option. Alright, we're going to be on the draw game 2 against Show and Tell Gaming. We have a Meddling Mage, which is awesome. Note about Meddling Mage in this matchup is you're not always naming the card Show and Tell. Oftentimes you're naming your opponent's sideboard cards, depending on the board state. So sometimes I'm going to go ahead and name Abrupt Decay, which is the main thing they have to get rid of creatures. I could name something like, what's that card called? Culling Ritual, that a lot of this deck, the Show and Tell decks are starting to pick up on as like a one of sideboard card against energy. But interesting that I didn't see black yet out of them. It could just be like a pure Simic Woodland version. No, wait, I did see black out of Woodland. Damn, I'm losing my mind, guys. Alright, so let's think about what we want to do here. Do we want to just Meddling Mage Show and Tell right now? And then next turn we do Amped Raptor Guide of Souls. We do Amped Raptor this turn. I think we would want a Meddling Mage first. Make sure they're not winning too fast on me. They could, of course, have an Abrupt Decay. Of course they could. But then we also have the Static Prison in hand. We're just making them have multiple answers to my sideboard and my main deck Static Prisons. And it's very unlikely for the Show and Tell gamer to actually be able to put it all together. We can, of course, counterspell this too. We will name Show and Tell. Another option to name could have actually been Born Upon a Wind. Is like we put the Static Prison in play to exile Omnitel. Then they can Born in response. But they would just Abrupt Decay in response if they had that card, so it's better to name Abrupt, probably. Right here, we're going to want to play Guide, and this question, do we want to play the Amp Raptor, or do we want to play the Ajani? We don't have a way to flip our Ajani, so I think Amp Raptor is going to lead to more victories on average. Let's go ahead and play all this stuff pre-combat, because we're going to generate some extra energy here. And we could play really aggressive with our life total. I'm just going to like shock again, just in case I ever need double red. I don't think I will, but there's no reason not to. Wait, my opponent did mana drain that after a bit of thunking. That was going to be a card that snowballed my board state, and it's good they mana drain this as opposed to the card I hit off of it, because it prevents me from hitting 3 energy, letting me do some extra damage to them. Great, but it did have the Toxic Deluge coming through there. We can rebuild really quickly with the cats. We have the technology to rebuild him. My opponent might have mana drain here, which would be a bit unfortunate. Which really slows down my rebuild. Maybe I could have led with the Ocelot Pride to see if that got mana drained instead. This is also a bit of a snowbally card. Right, and here's the card Show and Tell. I'm going to put Static Prison into play, and my opponent needs to have something like a Born Upon a Wind, or perhaps an Abrupt Decay to win here. Do you have it? No. Okay. Yeah, I think that was a very impatient Show and Tell cast from my opponent. I'm not killing them next turn. They really could have waited a lot longer to do that. I think, at least. I'm not a Show and Tell gamer. So what do I know? I'm very much not a Show and Tell gamer. I don't say that just as a joke. I really don't play the deck, so I can't call myself an expert. There's Lavinia. Good old sideboard cards. Got all of them when they show up. So now even if they get their Omniscience back, it's totally fine. Oh, I wouldn't give it back to them voluntarily. We want to have as many roadblocks in the way as possible for them. Alright, deluge number 2 is coming through. Thankfully, we still have the Omniscience hidden under the prison for a couple turns. I don't think I overcommitted to the board there. I think I really did want to play Lavinia to clock my opponent at a reasonable speed. That extra 2 damage will add up. Alright, and we're going to get Jegantha turning sideways soon. We're going to run out of energy, though, so uh-oh. Uh-oh. Alright, Goblin Bombardment, interesting. Not a card that's going to enable me to kill, though. Fortunately, the Abrupt Decay did come through, so I think my opponent probably can win the game. I would assume so, right? They only have 3 cards in hand, which is not that many, but starting with a Dig Through Time generally does get you there. I'll speed up the video and let them do their thing. All right, that's an Arena of Glory. Also, my opponent fizzled. I like just did not pay attention to Arena. I just let the game run. I went to message my friend and like I noticed it was my turn again. They probably win this turn though because they put Dig Through Time on top. Maybe could have played this bombardment here. I don't know. It's either my opponent wins here or they don't. It doesn't really matter. Alright, opponent's on the Hullbreaker Horror variant, which doesn't necessarily win on the spot. Unfortunately, I don't have the card Lightning Bolt in my deck. If I did, I would actually keep playing. because I would have an out in that case, which is funny. Here I am going to go ahead and scoop it up. My opponent doesn't necessarily have a deterministic win, but they're going to keep me from being able to play spells or permanents for the rest of the game, so yeah. As long as they have an instant in hand, they can just return a spell to my hand. Okay, yep. Same sideboarding moving forward. All right, on the play for game 3. Oh, we got some cards. We got a Lavinia. Let's do it. I'm going to go ahead and play Lavinia turn 3. I'm going to focus on just making the board as big as possible. Though I am kind of afraid of Deluge, because they showed it to me multiple times, and the thing is, Show and Tell Gaming does not always play Deluge, what I've learned. I think what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to Swarm Tactics, and we're going to throw a lot, and I mean a lot of Guide of Souls at our opponent. And we're probably going to build one up really big, so that we don't get hit by the Deluge that bad. Alright, Swarm Tactics. Right, so next turn we could probably pump this twice more, right? Which would get it to 8 toughness. Probably kills my opponent. Okay, they'll take my Johnny, so that won't happen, I guess. Now I question whether or not I should be playing Lavinia. The answer is I play Amped. If I play Amped or I play Lavinia. If I play Lavinia here, then and they board wipe, I play Amped Raptor to rebuild. If I play Amped Raptor and they cast Show and Tell, I put Lavinia into play. So yeah, I should definitely play Amped Raptor here. Go ahead and get a red land right here. Play Amped Raptor. And then since my opponent doesn't really play targeted removal other than like Abrupt Decay for sideboard cards, I'm going to go ahead and stack everything on this one Guide of Souls to make their Toxic Deluge card worse. Okay, another Amped Raptor, sure. Whee! Energy, go! Alright, Lavinia will be going into play. Traxa will hit the board instead. Okay, and they scoop. Sure. Alright, total energy victory, as they say. Alright, Arena's bugged out, but thoughts on this deck? I mean, it didn't do as bad in the mirror as I thought. I know it's not necessarily tech to beat it, but we were able to beat the gamers that we played against on energy. But that last game showed us that we are really here to beat up Show and Tell. We have so many sideboard cards that it's just so difficult for them to play through it. They essentially need to have an Abrupt Decay for every single one, while also having Toxic Deluge to keep the board in control. And my opponent did wipe my board with Toxic Deluge twice, and that was the one time they were finally able to win the game, when they had Deluge, Deluge, Abrupt Decay. So asking that of Show and Tell is a very high ask, right? So you're going to end up winning a lot of games and taking a lot of games off of them, which is awesome. So I do recommend this deck a lot for tournament play. If you're expecting a lot of Show and Tell, a lot of unfair decks, a lot of decks that are going to have to find answers to your sideboard cards, yeah, load up on all of these sideboard cards. It's awesome. But for ladder play, you're probably going to run into a lot of fair decks, so I might tweak this deck a little bit. I might want to do One Ring is really good. One Ring and Fable the Mirror Breaker are both like really, really, really good in fair creature mirrors, right? I don't know if we necessarily have room for the ring. Like what you could do if you wanted to do ring, you could maybe do 2 ring main, 2 ring side, take out the Ragavans, and then also maybe take out like a Meddling Mage and a Vortex like this. And then that becomes your more for ladder play version of the deck. You don't need all 4 rings though. You could just do like 2 or 3. You could also do maybe 0 main deck. I think I would personally probably do 0 main deck like this. But it's hard to say. Obviously build the deck to your tastes. You want to have fun with it, go ahead and do that. And yeah, I think this deck is a really solid alternative to the other energy builds that we've had. This deck definitely shows that Flage is a very strong card. it 100% showed that Mockingbird is a very legit card. Like, this is a timeless power level card, and it is good not just because of your deck, but because of your opponent's deck. It's fantastic in mirror matches. It's absolutely fantastic against something like Blue Black Luris, where you get to go ahead and copy up the Psychic Frogs and the Bowmasters from their deck. Really do love this card. And when this card first came out and I first played with it after the set dropped, Bloomburrow dropped, I was like, oh no, you're going to end up in awkward situations where your opponent uses removal spells to clear the board and then it doesn't have anything to copy. But this deck is so fast and so proactive and has so many 1-drops and 2-drops to copy that you pretty much don't ever run into that issue, which is awesome. All right, I think that's it for my thoughts on the deck. This is pretty cool. If you want to craft it, it gave me an easy run to Mythic this season after I hadn't played very much. And if you are looking to hit Mythic, I think this is a solid choice.